All right, the table has had a chance to dry overnight. And what occurred to me overnight is that before this piece gets mounted, I really need to do some final sanding on the inside edges, inside surfaces here. So I'm gonna, before getting on to cutting the notches out here and here to accommodate the back legs, I'm gonna give this a good sand right up to 220 grit on this surface and this surface. So a little bit of sanding and then we're back to legs. Okay, I got these two pieces, the inside surfaces now sanded up to 220, so these would be ready for finishing. Just a little quick comment about my Ryobi orbital sander here. I've used a few different sanders. You've seen me use a little orange Black & Decker sander that's powered with a plug in the wall. And the dust collector bag on that is completely useless. I mean, why do they even put it on? But this one, man, does this ever work well. This collects just so much dust. Now I'm still using a respirator and I have the Anaconda going here just to kind of suck up loose air that's kicking around nearby. And I have an air filter up on the ceiling that's filtering the dust in the air that just kind of makes its way ambiently around the room. But this thing just does a great job. So yeah, kudos to Ryobi for that dust collection. I'm pleased with that. All right, back to the legs, and we'll figure out how to make sure they're not too splayed. All right, I have the legs loosely positioned here in the table, the back legs, and at the top, I'm 27 1/8 inches apart, and on the bottom, because the round is 1/8 of an inch narrower, and it's 1/8 of an inch from that flat surface to this edge of this round. So that's 1/4 of an inch, so I should be 26 7/8 between the two here. And I am 27 5/8, so I'm out 3/4 of an inch. Which means these legs need to come in 3/4 of an inch or 3/8 of an inch on either side, which would translate to about 1/16 of an inch up here. However, I want to make sure that I don't have a case where this leg is splayed out and this leg is straight, so I'm going to check everything with a square. And I am expecting both to be out a little bit, but let's see how much. Actually, this leg is smack on. Oh, glad I checked. This leg is perfect. This leg is not. Look at that. Don't know if you can see that. So I've got, it's touching here, and I'm out by a good 1/4 of an inch up at the top. So I have to take a little bit off this side. That's the only adjustment to make. Bonus. I'm gonna get a pencil and just mark that. All right, I'm just gonna, I don't know how well you can see that, but I'm just gonna take off up to that line. So it's just barely a 1/16 of an inch, maybe slightly more than a 1/16. So I'll be back when I have that cut out. All right, we made that little minor cut, and we are exactly where we want to be. That has done the trick. Okay, so we can now get the lower legs, put it glued in place, and then we'll put the bottom on. Ooh, it's getting exciting. I'm just going to leave this here, the bottom in for the time being until I get the legs glued in. I just like the support that it's giving to the top leg. So I've got a little bit of glue on the top of this leg. Down. Okay, getting some good squeeze out there. And when I have the other leg in, I'm going to just kind of bring the two legs tight in together, just to prevent them from splaying out. I recognize too that glue, like end grain gluing here, is not really intended for strength to support keep the leg where it's supposed to be. I will be putting some screws in from behind to keep these legs in place, and doing some joinery up here to keep that leg in place. So the glue and dowel is primarily for positioning here. It's not for permanence. Now I'm just going to get a loose clamp and tighten those guys together. All right, legs in place. Okay, while that's setting up, I'm going to deal with the fixing of this leg to this bottom shelf. And my plan at this point is to drill a hole through this piece and into this piece, and through that hole I'm going to drive a finishing nail, so it'll just kind of slip through this leg but bind a little bit into the bottom shelf. I'm not looking to again, it's not a positional thing, it's more of a positional thing than an anchoring thing. And I'll show you the nail I've got in mind. It's a heavy duty nail. So that's a 3-inch finishing nail that I intend to put as a pin through here. So you can see that it would penetrate 1.5 inches into that bottom shelf. Now I'm not going to drive it into this wood without a pilot hole at all, because that will just split the thing to bits. But and I'll make it a loose fit, not a loose fit, but a snug fit, but not a binding fit, going through the leg. Then I'll have a small hole here that I'll need to fill. But keep in mind, there's going to be some banding that goes around there. So you won't even see that when it's finished. Okay, I got my hole drilled here for that nail. So that goes through the leg about halfway on a fairly large hole. Then about half, maybe 2/3 of the way through, it goes to a smaller hole, so it'll be binding in the leg. And the hole is drilled way down here into this piece here, a pie hole, so we won't get any splitting as that's driven in. But before I sink that, I want to make sure the whole top, the bottom piece is going to have to be put in. It's all got to be done at the same time. So I'm not going to drive that in until I can take these clamps off. Here, off the legs. And then I'm going to put glue across the bottom of this shelf to glue it to the back. Put glue around the legs here. I'll put glue around here, glue around that leg. And then use the nail, or my little nailer, just to tack that in place. I'll probably want to put some clamps going from here to here as well, just to hold it. And then we can sink this guy. Then we can sink this nail. So while I'm waiting for this to set up, I'm coming over to the to the doors here, and I'm going to trim these to the appropriate width. So that'll be done through the table saw, and then we're going to sand out all of these little joints. In fact, I'll probably sand it first, sand all these joints, and then run it through the... Just thought I'd show you how I'm sanding out these, kind of getting in between each of these little ribs here on these beads. I'm simply putting the sandpaper around my steel ruler. I had been using a little bit of this plastic that we use for the dust collector, but the steel ruler works a little bit better. So I just simply put the paper around it and go like so. It's doing a real nice job. So carry on that. A little tedious, but it gets the job done. So that was a pass through using 80 grit that cleaned up these beads very nicely. I'm going to cut them to width, and I'll go through again with 120, possibly 180, just so that there's, clean it up, ready for a finish. So both pieces have been done, and as I was sanding this, I put in the cutoff block just to provide some support, so I'm not going to push down on this with the potentially to break it. So that gave me the good support that I needed to do that sanding. Now I'm going to go cut it to width. Okay, got a little ahead of myself, a little excited on some of this assembly, and I did some things without putting it on camera, so I'm going to show you what I've done. So this is one of the doors. This is how it's going to open. It hasn't been mounted yet, so it's just loose. But cutting this to the right size was a little bit of a challenge. I wasn't sure how to go about doing it. So this piece on this side has not been cut to the appropriate length yet. I did trim it down to the right width, as you can see, although it'll probably be, I'll do a little bit of fine tuning on that yet. But I'll show you how I go about cutting this. The other thing that's happened is we've got, I put screws in the back legs. So they are held now firmly in place. We've got a dowel up here on the top and this screw here, so they aren't going anywhere. And that little nail that I was showing you earlier, I put that in place and used the nail set, got that down. As you can see, it's pinched up tight against this side here, so it's running perpendicular. It looks real good. The other thing, little adjustment that I'm going to make is I'm going to trim this little ear off here, so the back of the table will be flush with the leg. The top of the table will be cut straight back. So we get a little bit more consistent look around the table. This just kind of looks odd sticking out like that now that we've gone that far. So let me set up the camera and I'll show you how I go about getting this piece to fit. So the trick in getting this piece to fit, of course, is determining what's the length from here to here. And I could use a tape measure and bend it around and stuff, but I'm borrowing a trick that I see Bad Chad using a lot. So I've mentioned Bad Chad in one of my earlier videos. Bad Chad is an automotive design guy. He builds cars, fascinating stuff. So although he's in a kind of a different line, automotive stuff, there's still things you can learn, especially when you think of it in terms of he's fabricating, I'm fabricating. We're doing the same kind of thing. Different mediums. So using a piece of tape, I just stick it on here, and now I'm going to mark the edge of the leg here, and I'm going to mark the edge of the leg down here on the tape. So now I know on a curve exactly how far that's going to go. Now we can take the tape, transfer it over here to, I'm going to put it on this way. Transfer it over to, no, actually I'm going to put it on this way. Transfer it over here, and I can find probably the best fit over there. Right there. So we're putting the tape on there with my mark. I know exactly where that's going to be cut. So what I'll do is I'll use a saw and I'll cut through here. Now these angles aren't going to be exactly 90 degrees, so it's going to be a little bit of hit and miss. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start here. And my initial cut is kind of going to be more out that direction rather than straight across. And same thing out here. I'm going to just kind of cut more like that. And then what I'll do is I'll use my my bench sander and just kind of nibble away at that, bringing it back in line until we have exactly the angle that we need. That's how I did the other one, the other front piece. It worked really well. Got it exactly where we want it. So, having identified where it is I want to make that cut, and it happens to be right smack in the middle, in the valley of one of these beads, which is perfect, I'm going to make that initial cut just with a hacksaw, just because I want to go slow and careful. And then I'll go over to the bench sander and cut that off. Sand that off. All right, we've got those two cuts made. And now we'll just see how this fits in general. In fact, I can take the tape off it. Okay, so I'm going to start by going over the sander and taking a little bit off the nose on this. So we can see we got quite an angle here. You see that? Yeah, quite an angle here. So I'm going to cut that, use the sander and cut off probably about the top half of that piece, and we'll see what we get with that. So I'm just making this cut kind of by eye. There's no magic to it. There's going to be a lot of trial and error as I go through this. You can see we took a fair bit off that. We'll go give that a test, see how it looks. So that's getting pretty close to what we want. I'm going to take just a little bit more kind of off, kind of cut across that angle there. And that's going to give us a very close fit on that side. And then we'll worry about going after the bottom. So back to the sander, we'll be back in a minute. So that's closing in on the fit we're going after. It's not quite there yet. I do need to take a little bit more of an angle through here. Probably that. So I'm going to take just a little bit more off with the sander. This is exaggerated a little bit. It won't do quite that much, but I'm approaching that. Okay, with all that little sanding that I've done on the belt sander, I'm happy with the fit that I've got up here. At least I'm close enough up here that I'm going to now focus my attention on the bottom end down here. There we are. So I'm going to focus my attention on the bottom to get this to fit in snugly. And what that will require, of course, similar operation to what I did at the top. I'll need to cut a little bit off this bit here. So make those little fine adjustments on the belt sander, on the bench sander, and come back when I have something to show again. So getting really, really, really close. We can see the beads here are just proud about the same distance all the way along. So that just means smidgen off the bottom here. And then I think we have this piece cut exactly how we want it. It'll take a little bit of trimming to get the edges here, but yeah, I'm just going to take a little wee bit more off the bottom and I think we've got it. Okay, I'm very pleased with that fit. Right from the bottom up to the top. I don't think I can get much closer. And then keep in mind too that we have this band that's going to go on the top that'll provide a little bit more, and bottom. So it just provides a little bit more relief here. So I don't need to worry too much about making this absolutely flush as this piece goes on and kind of just accents the roundness of it all. I think that's going to look really good. So what that leaves me to do now is make some minor adjustments. Bring it around here so you can see. So I've got a little bit of a gap over on this side and no gap over here. A little bit of a gap down here, no gap here. So the piece is a little bit twisted. I'm learning. So what I'm going to do again is I'm going to use the belt sander and I'm just going to trim a little bit off up in here, coming down, and I'm going to trim a little bit starting probably about here and going down to here. So we'll just make this piece fit a little bit better. So it can be a lot of little fiddly bits and trial and error and all of that nonsense, but that's what we're up to now. Short strokes. All right, so now that I have the little door pieces fitting reasonably well, there's still some fine tuning to be done on that. I'm going to turn my attention to these little ears and cut these guys off. Not exactly sure how I'm going to do that yet, but that's what I'm going to do next. All right, so I'm going to attempt to cut this little ear off using my flush trim oscillating saw. I think I'll clamp down the piece first. It's wanting to dance around. That seems to have gone well. Let's try the other side. So I didn't get any significant tear out on the other side there, but I'm going to put some tape over here just in case. A little insurance never hurt. That might help prevent some tear out here. Okay. Seem to have done all right there. And with the tape, seems like there's a little tear out. Just a little bit of tear, but I think we're okay. We can get by with that. There'll be a little bit of banding on there and some filler, so I think we're good. So speaking of banding, I'm contemplating that now. And I think it might be time to apply it. The banding that I've cut is much wider than the top, so I'm going to be planing that, sanding it, or possibly planing it to get it to the right dimension. All right, next step in the process is putting this banding on. So that's going to go around here. And just spoke with our chief designer. And this piece, you'll notice, is a little bit wider than this. And I'm going to leave it a little bit wider so that the top of the table actually serves, this banding piece kind of makes it a little bit like a tray. So it'll be an interesting effect. We're going to see how that works. If it doesn't work, then it'll be sanded off and be flush with the top of the table, but it makes it interesting. And similarly, when I put it on the bottom, if we keep the same width, then it does make the bottom shelf look a little bit thicker than the top, than it does right now. In fact, it would remove any, this is just slightly thinner than this, and if somebody's critical, they would look at it and say, yeah, there's something different there. So anyway, we can make these pieces exactly the same, and provides that nice little decorative element. And on the top, a decorative element, and kind of keeps, you know, marbles from rolling off the top of the table, you know, in case you want to use this for your marble collection. Okay, that's banding one. A little bit of glue there I'm going to get rid of. Now, for our second piece of banding, the piece is not quite long enough. And in fact, it broke, so I have a second piece that I'll be adding to finish it off. But before I do that, I'm gonna get a nice clean cut on this join. Okay, the pieces are cut, ready for a join. It's not exactly a perfect fit, but a little bit of filler will do the trick. Okay, that gets us banding most of the way around. There'll be a little bit of filler to put in and adjustments to make, but that's, and some sanding of course. However, I have one little issue now, and that is, well, I'm not going to call it an issue, this is a known thing. Where we cut off the little ears on the back of the table down here, I don't have a curve, I have a straight edge. So I'm going to need to cut the banding off and just put on a straight edge right there. So let me turn the table around and figure out how to do that next. Okay, I got to make a cut. I want to make a cut right here and right here. That's right at the edge of the leg. Use my little square, mark a line. And to make this cut, bit of a risk, I'm going to use my oscillating saw. Let's hope this works. That worked. Worked perfectly, and next we're going to put that piece on there like that. How about that? Okay. The same thing over here. Wonderful. Go on there. I'm just going to get a clean edge on this. The tricky bit here is I want to make sure that I get that flush with the rest of this piece. So I'm going to take some precautions here. Okay. Just trying to make sure that I get this piece in line here, because if this is going to form a little tray, I want to make sure that I don't have a gap here, or it doesn't droop off at this end. So I'm okay with that. I'm going to glue it in place, put a couple little tacks in it, and I'll cut that off after the glue has had a chance to set. Okay, let's do the other end. Split right where I didn't want it to, but fortunately there's tons of glue in there. That's going to hold okay. Okay, that's our banding in place. Next I'm going to put a little bit of filler in all of those holes and get it ready for final sanding. Bring you over here to get a look at it. Okay, so I got some filler on the lower parts and the lower band. I'm just working now on the upper band. In this spot, I'm just making sure I have filler kind of in the crack so that when I sand it, I'll be sanding off excess filler there. And I won't have to fill it later. That's the theory. Okay, that's that. And I'm going to do where I have that little, where the top is joined onto the back. Here, I do have some nails that I'm going to fill as well, nail holes. That's not part of the lovely nastiness. That's my own doing, so I'm okay to hide my own mistake. Or my own, that's not a mistake, but my own construction flaws. But the natural ones I kind of like to keep. What I'm doing here is I'm just going around the top gap. So where this edging meets the top, there were little tiny gaps, and I'm just going around and filling those in. So I'm going to give that a chance to set. I'll let glue to set up before I cut these off. Now I can start thinking a little bit more about a hinge mechanism, so that's next. All right, everything but the hinges. So I've got the banding here, rough sanded with 80 grit, cut off here at the ends. So that's kind of looking the way we want it. Coming around, I like this little treatment here on the front of the legs. That's looking good, just what I'm after. And that continues around to the end. Same treatment. It did get squared off here, as you can see. And we left this little bit of a lip on the top of the table. Just, you know, to keep your marbles on the top of the table when you put them there. You come in from playing out in the street. I'm kidding. Okay, last bit is going to be the hinges. What I'm going to experiment with is I have these little piano hinges, cut-offs from another project. So of course they're going to be hinged back here. So I'm going to fiddle with that a little bit. Try and make those work. There'll be a little bit more clearance cutting required to get that opening and closing properly, so it may wind up on the table, so I'm taking a smidge off, but likely that's just going to be some slow sanding with the bench sander. All right, hinge fitting. I brought you in close so you can see what it is I'm working on for the hinges. The concept being this little hinge is going to go here. The space between the hinges is 114 millimeters. I realize I should have measured this. Yeah, and this guy is 85 millimeters. So I've positioned the holes, you know, done the math and positioned the holes here so I can screw that in. Then I've done a little bit of fine sanding on this piece to get that in there. And I need to drill the holes. So I'll drill some holes here on this edge to accommodate the hole, hinge. All right, let's see how that works. That works pretty well. So that's one door, that's the other door. So like I said, I've got a little bit of sanding to do here. That's a pretty tight fit. And I'll probably take just a little bit off the front here, just I want that to go in just a tad more. But overall, I like the look. And this is a little springy. Not sure if I like that or don't like it. For now, I'm going to leave it. Okay, a couple knobs on there. So I'm going to call that assembly complete. Now there's going to be some fine finishing, fine sanding, a little bit of tuning here and there. But that is the Julia table assembled. Hey, thanks very much for watching. Like and subscribe and look out for the next video.